Jess, are you going now? We're going now. Are we hosting?
I was gonna start, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Cool. So so this is our second week of trying to do these more condensed show and tells. Trying to make it sort of take the pressure off teams having to prepare a whole half an hour. So you just prepare sort of 10 minutes each, and then have 5 minutes for discussion and feedback. So this week we've got 3 show and tells. Move a bit more to the side. First we've got Aaron talking about the community approach, and then we've got donation by post, which Alice is going to talk through, and then to finish off we're going to talk about the replatforming project, which is sounds a bit technical, but it's basically redoing the website so we can make changes more easily and be more user-centered. I'm going to be strict with timings, so 10 minutes to talk, and then 5 minutes, or 10 minutes for talking and showing, and then 5 minutes for discussion and feedback. So over to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Harry. So I was going to be probably slightly short now, a little bit more time for questioning, because I'm not going to be able to answer questions and Charlotte's not here today. So I'll be probably slightly shorter than 10, but then we'll have a bit of time at the end for questions. So thank you for joining us, everyone. As you can see, show and tell from us this week is going to be on accessible transport and the impact this can have. Just as a reminder, you've got Bethan, our Innovation Officer from Neath, Charlotte, our Service Designer, and myself working on this work at the moment. And again, for anyone joining us for the first time, or as just a quick reminder, our discovery question we're looking into is to engage and understand the strengths and needs of communities in high-risk, low-resource places. So as with each week, just a reminder again, sessions of conversation, so do put your questions, thoughts, reflections in the chat. We'll also have some time to go through those and any other questions you've got at the end, as Harry's just mentioned. Following some feedback last week as well, we're just trying to make sure we do have enough time to talk through the questions you've got. If you don't know, do drop us an email or a Teams message, and we'll be happy to discuss those afterwards, or if you walk away and have anything burning, having reflected on it. But today, what we actually wanted to discuss were 2 particular insights that have come out of the interviews and the event we ran last week, focusing on some of the challenges and impacts of transport communities that we've been working with. So, much like last week when Martin pointed out that strategic collaboration isn't anything new, transport needing to be reliable and affordable probably isn't a completely new issue for any of you guys, and you might have thought that's a pretty basic statement, but when you start looking into it, the issue is wider than you might be inclined to think without too much probing. So what really came through our interviews last week in the Voluntary Sector Forum was that if you're looking to improve the well-being and the support available to the vulnerable people in the communities that we're working in, there was a real need to make improvements to public transport. Primarily, and obviously the most obvious impact, is that if it's the only means of transport is expensive, those that most need support are going to be the least likely to be able to afford it and access that support. This seems to be a particularly prominent issue in and around Cambourne, where we've been told a local day return in the town can cost as much as £9, which is obviously extortionate amount to travel a few miles. We also heard multiple accounts of services, especially during this last year, that have become more scarce and less likely to arrive on time. That's obviously not allowing users to rely upon these to make any appointments they need and have to access the support they need. Alongside this, we've also been told and given examples by community workers of users with mobility issues having to walk with a Zimmer frame for over a mile to a bus stop, which obviously is not conducive to good access to support. Also, even if they do manage to make that long journey, the buses, very few of them have been accessibly adapted, and it's a very arduous and painstaking journey to make. Charlotte's not with us today, but this is probably her favourite meme from having been handling the social media engagement for the last few months. Danny Sanders outside the Red Roof bus station waiting for his bus. A local user put this onto a community platform to highlight some of the inadequacies and unreliability of the local services in around Cambourne. We thought this captured that quite well. You've also got a quote on this slide from a member of staff from the local housing association that came out of our event in Neath last week, which is public transport. It's the biggest problem affecting Neath. Unreliable and infrequent services mean lots of people are unable to access many appointments to get the support they need. This conversation actually occurred in the group that I was facilitating. It was evident between the 5 or 6 of us in that group that every single voluntary sector worker that was taking part in the conversation had users that faced this issue when trying to access the support they offered. So it does seem to be a very prominent issue. We also spoke to the founder of a local food bank who had some fascinating insight into this, amongst many other things as well that we'll get to, I'm sure, over the next few weeks and months. But one particular gentleman he's dealing with at the moment had a need to get to Hale, which is only 7 miles, I think, from where he lived. But he couldn't afford the bus, and the buses didn't run at the correct times for any of the appointments that he could be offered. So this food bank founder has now had to put on an extra fund, which is actually Jen Love's fund, which has got £10,000 set aside in it to pay for people's transport to access the food bank and hospitals. So it's not even that he's having to provide the food to the area and the communities now, he's also having to fundraise and provide the funding for the transport, which is just too incredulous, really. Alongside this as well, astoundingly, we've actually heard over the last probably 3 or 4 weeks several accounts of people that have never seen the sea that live in Cambourne, and the beach is literally probably three miles from the town centre. But with people not owning cars and the cost of a family bus ticket being around £15, people just don't make the journey, which is, yeah, just when you think about not being able to get 3 miles away, pretty stuff. Second insight we're going to talk about is just the lack of accessibility, and this is led to duplicating resources. So much like, and linking nicely with when we're talking around the need for strategic collaboration last week, we've mainly been discussing the impact on individuals of these transport issues, whether that's users themselves, accessing support, or support workers that have felt frustrated and upset at their inability to provide the services they know they can. But some of these conversations this week have actually led us to looking into how these are impacting the organisations themselves also. So that same food bank founder, who obviously has also had to put on a separate fund for transport, as we talked about, also expanded the food banks from just having 1 food bank in the area to, well, there used to be 5 and there are now 4. But that's due to people not being able to get to the food banks, due to, again, not being able to afford the bus fares to get to the food bank. So that potential service that was there to serve the communities had to be replicated previously 5 times. So one has had to close recently due to some problems with it, but 4 food banks within probably no longer more than a 10-mile square radius is pretty astonishing. Sometimes less than 2 miles people are willing to travel to get there. You've got a direct quote from the founder here. So to catch a bus from Cambourne to Red Bull, 3 miles is £7. And we want to make sure we cover the whole area. And this food bank is coming out. I think they do slightly more than the Trussell Trust. They do 8 over 6 months parcels. If you're needing to access those parcels for a week's worth of food, it's highly unlikely you're going to be affording £7 to make the trip down to the food bank.
Just to say, one more minute.
Grant, well, I've just got to my last few questions. Thank you, Harry. That's perfect time. Cool. So that took us with some important questions for this week, which is transport a need or a right? Obviously, with everyone we're looking at and discussing, it seems like some of your basic rights you aren't able to access if there is just a lack of transport and you can't afford a car. Would improved transport lead to better collaboration and streamlined services? Big question needs to be answering. And do these same problems exist in Nelson? And if not, why not? We haven't covered too much. We've had a couple of insights that lead us down this track a little bit in Nelson so far, but nothing so clear. So something else for us to look into. But as Harry has nicely brought me around with 1 minute warning, I haven't had a chance to check the chat function icon showing my screen, but if there are any questions, guys, feel free to jump in now. More thoughts and reflections, obviously, as well.
Can I ask a question? So transport's been an issue in, is it all 3 locations that you're looking at? And it sounds like it just keeps coming up again and again, which is really interesting because obviously that impacts access to multiple services. Right.
Yeah, so I think that's the key point around this, Jess, as well, and why I made the recognition the first slide when we talked about it. It's quite an obvious statement. I think probably access to reliable and affordable transport is needed for people, but when you think of all the knock-on consequences, and also this year, especially over the past year, when services have been so stretched, obviously they've been being reduced or offered at a reduced rate in the hospitals and services as well. If you then have problems accessing those reduced appointments, it's highly unlikely you'll be able to access them. And in terms of where we've seen them, as I said, I think in Nelson we've had a couple of issues and it being mentioned by a couple of people, but it's certainly come through more strongly across Cambourne and Neath over the last month or so.
So with transport, I guess it's not like a sexy policy area, even though it's like a really transformative one. What do you think the challenges are going to be with trying, if that was something we wanted to like go for, with trying to get like the kind of senior management bought into the idea of us doing something that enabled people to go between places where they live?
So I think, Harry, probably for myself, it's very early for me to have any sort of proper inclination into this. We've established this over the last week, but I think some of the challenges obviously is it doesn't directly link in with any of the causal areas that we look at. Transport isn't a particularly, as you said, sexy thing. However, it has overarching pieces into all areas of what we actually as an organisation want to follow up on over the next 10 years of the strategy, including our green ambitions. So if we actually put on some form of transport that obviously, or supported some form of transport as environmentally friendly too, we could actually satisfy that too. I think there's a little bit of work to be done in understanding. I think what we'd like to do is understand exactly why it's so bad and whether it was this bad before. We know that subsidised buses weren't a thing or aren't a thing in Camborne now. We haven't actually had too much in Leith around the cost. It was more the unreliability and the lack of services. So I think just uncovering a bit more around what the issue is, because these insights have come through lines of questioning that weren't directly related to transport. So I think getting to some further of the actual granular detail would help us maybe decide what we could potentially do in that space.
Just as well, I suppose, just to point out, I think in the past Red Cross has done more around transport, and certainly in my time we responded to inquiries at the Scottish Parliament in community transport generally, and there is a whole kind of community transport sector as well. So I think it's interesting. I think that it's a need that's often come up, and I think that there's numerous different reasons for it. So sometimes it can be due to mobility, sometimes it can be due to inappropriate routes, sometimes it can be affordability. So I suppose digging down deeper into understanding what the issues, what's driving that inaccessibility or that poor transport would be an interesting next step. But I suppose my question would be, so this process is about identifying needs that exist in the community, but I suppose, are we raising expectations around what Red Cross can or can't do in response to that?
Yeah, so I think in response to that, Fiona, I think I would be really clear around not suggesting we're going to follow up on anything in terms of an output or outcome with a service offering being made. But I think one of the key things that's come through in most of our show and tell so far, and pretty much every week when we've sat down to synthesize who we've been talking to and what they've been saying, is that, and as I mentioned before, it's reasonably intrinsically linked to a lot of the things we are looking to obviously work, or the spheres that we are working in and the circles that we are going to be operating in, and sort of support with deliver. It, to me, would make entire sense if, alongside strategically planning what we could possibly deliver and working with communities, how we could either help facilitate those conversations or obviously take part in them ourselves as well, if that was something we would do.
Thanks, Aaron.
Sorry.
We're sadly we're going to have to move on to the next.
That's okay.
Because of time. Unless the question is quick, Sarah.
It was just a point really that, I mean, I live in West Wales. I'm not sure so much about Leith, but you said Camborne's near the beach. A lot of our public transport services are seasonal. So could it be that we're out of season? You get a lot more buses and the reliability is much better in the holiday periods. So I don't know if that makes a difference.
Yeah, no, and also obviously with the global pandemic as well, Sarah, that could have, as mentioned, it's been last year that's got particularly worse. So it certainly is, and sorry, Harry, it certainly is something that we need to look into more before making any decisions, especially in terms of following up on any service provisions or anything Fiona was mentioning. But if you do have any further questions, because I know Harry wants to get me off, drop us an email or a Teams message and we can have that discussion. And if not, we'll catch in with you again next week or the week after.
Nice, thank you, Aaron, and thanks for people's input. So I think next we have Alice, who's going to talk about donating by post.
Hi everyone. Harry, I think I might need 11 minutes. Can I have one extra?
No.
I planned it for 15 minutes. Okay, I'm just trying to share my screen. Okay, I hope you can all see. So I'm Alice. I work in our Innovation Hub. I'm here today to chat to you about a new service that Monica and I are developing called Donate by Post. It's an income generation service, and it allows our supporters to donate clothes to us by post for free, which we can then sell in our retail stores to make money. I'm going to be focusing on our test and learn approach, so how we kind of quickly test our ideas to see if we should be moving them forward. So how does it work? Supporters can order a free bag online, just as though they would order any product from our online gift shop, except they don't have to pay, they don't have to give their credit card details. A couple of days later, they receive a bag in the post. The bag is extremely, well, it's as environmentally friendly as we could possibly find. It decomposes in 90 days in any normal compost bin, household compost bin. And they also receive a leaflet that explains the process, exactly what can and can't be donated, and a bit of information around where the money goes and a thank you. Once they fill their bag with all their donations, they then download a QR code and take the bag to thousands of drop-off locations across the country. So it's Collect Plus stores, usually local news agents. All the clothes are delivered to our warehouse in Winsford where they're processed by retail volunteers and then sent to stores to be sold, or potentially also eBay and Amazon stores. So why is this important? So really this is all around increasing income and revenue generation, which is obviously a huge strategic priority, especially this year for the British Red Cross and also within retail. So the way we're doing this is by trying to generate as much stock as possible. In 2019, we had 1.8 million bags of items donated to Red Cross shops, whereas last year this dropped to only 22,000, which is a huge decrease. But also thinking around how we can target specific audiences in order to increase the value of any stock that's donated. Obviously, the higher its value, the more profits we can make. And we also wanted to launch as fast as possible. We kind of the assumption there's a huge need for this at the moment, with lots of all charity shops shut, and also lots of people at home kind of spending their time reorganising their wardrobes. Also, when we kind of started back in November, we only found 3 other charities that were kind of working in this space. And a quick Google last week, we found nearly 20. So it's really important, for want of a better word, to get ahead of competitors to get out there quickly. So traditionally in many organisations, perhaps what would have happened when we come up with this idea would be to spend many weeks, many months, developing a final perfect solution before it could be sent to the world, and testing coming to customers or supporters that it wasn't as perfect as possible, and then maybe a huge business case put together, only to launch it, only to find out that actually it didn't work. So lots of time, lots of money, lots of effort was wasted. So we kind of work in a very different way in the Innovation Hub, and we try and test as fast as possible, as quickly as possible, and failing as quickly as possible so we can move on to another idea. There's kind of 3 main things that we're testing when we look at kind of an income generating service like this. Firstly, is it something that supporters need and want? Is it going to make us money, and can actually we make it happen? So back in August, we ran what we call a smokescreen test. So I can't take any credit for this. This was Holly and Talia in our e-commerce team. But what we did is we put some adverts on Facebook. So here are the adverts. They were fake adverts. So when you clicked on the link to find out more about Donate by Post, you got a message that said, we haven't quite launched yet, but please fill in this survey to help us understand, how to make the service as great as possible. And also, if you're interested to know when we're going to launch it, please provide your email address. So this was really quick. The social media ads were kind of mocked up in a day, 2 days, and the test was run for 4 days and only cost us £700. We had over 700 people answered the survey, and 200 provided email addresses. So the cost per response, so the cost per person to answer the survey was only 99p, which is much, much, much lower than many other marketing activities that the Red Cross have. So this was a really, really quick and really cheap and really easy way to understand that, yeah, this is something that our supporters want and are interested in, and so that we should develop it further. We also learned a whole load of information around the needs of supporters from the survey and also the comments. So, for example, we learned that it was really important for the bags to be environmentally friendly. We also learned a lot around one red flag actually was that 50% of respondents said they wouldn't take the bag of clothes to a drop-off location, and so we would need to pick up the clothes from them. This is a red flag because that would probably make it unfinancially viable. So that was something we definitely needed to test in the next stage. We also learned a lot about marketing. 2 of the ads worked a lot better than the other 2. Yeah, so kind of we learned loads, but the main learning was, yeah, this is something customers want, and we should carry on testing it. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a break because of COVID and redeployments, but back in November, we picked up the project and we decided to run a small pilot for 3 weeks. So we put this together really quickly. So I think retail approved the pilot on the Monday, and the product was live on the website by the Thursday. So we did it really, really quickly, again, really, really cheaply, rather than spending weeks and weeks negotiating with a postal company for returns. Also weeks and weeks going through IG processes, information governance processes. Instead of using the barcode functionality, we instead printed off labels, which we stuck to the bags, that customers could, yes, the postal label would already be on the bag when the customer had it. So that's just one example of a way that we weren't testing the full solution, but because it was quicker and cheaper to do it another way. But it was the same, customers kind of bought through the website and then dropped off the bags at Collect Plus stores. So it was really, really successful, with no marketing whatsoever, apart from a few people tweeting about the product. In 3 weeks, we had 89 customers order 139 bags. So yeah, again, this showed us this is something customers want. And also the return rate of bags in the first couple of weeks was 80%. So 80% of those who ordered bags from us returned it to us, which showed that actually, even though in the first test, customers said no, or half of customers said no, we're not going to take it anywhere, you have to pick up from us. Actually, in practice, in real life, they were willing to, which was a really great learning. Other things we learned that 28 days wasn't enough. So in the pilot, supporters had 28 days to return their bag to us. This was so that on day 29, we could refund it to reduce our costs. We learned that wasn't long enough. A lot of feedback we had from customers that didn't return their bags was that it wasn't long enough.
And so we have 1 more minute, I'm afraid.
Harry. Okay, and then so then we also found that the average value of the bag was £41. So yeah, great. This is financially viable, and it was likely to be financially viable. We also found actually marketing would be really important. One of the bags that came in was over £250. So that really showed us if we get our marketing right, if we're attracting the right people, we can make lots of money, hopefully. We then did lots of number crunching to understand actually in the real world, in the final solution, what the cost would be, because obviously costs for the pilot is different for costs for the final solution. And yeah, we found that this is profitable, is financially viable. So if you look at the orange box, this is what we estimate the profit to be per bag ordered. So for every bag ordered by a customer, we expect to make £30 profit based on kind of results of our testing. So what's next? So we kind of, our test so far has proved this is something that we should definitely be progressing with. So we're going to launch phase 2 of the pilot, hopefully tomorrow. We're just waiting for information governance to sign off the our relationship with the postal company. But yeah, hoping to launch tomorrow for 3 weeks. And yeah, during that period, just continuously test and learn, improving, making the service even better. Does anyone have any questions?
Last one. One person asked about, was there much rubbish in the bags?
Yeah, so actually, no. So one of the learnings that there's two things we can learn, right? We can learn things to make the final solution better, and then we can learn things that we can change instantly. So one of the things we found at the beginning was that people weren't reading our leaflet and weren't necessarily donating items that we wanted. So for example, we'd said like we couldn't have stained or damaged clothes, and in the first week or so we found that people were giving those back to us. And so that, because we learned that, we then changed the messaging. We on our comms emails that we sent out as reminders, we gave a sterner message, and we also added why and said, you know, if you're sending us stuff that we can't sell, it's going to be really costly for us, so please don't. Another thing we did was that we found really early on that people were sometimes ordering 6, 7, 8 bags, and it was these bags that were often the lowest value, because people were just putting a load of rubbish in there. So what we did after the first week, we limited the amount of bags a person could order, so people could only order 2. So my answer is, at the beginning, yes, but then we really quickly learned that was happening and why that was happening, and made changes so it didn't happen. But it still does happen a bit. Some people just send in stuff that they just don't read the leaflet.
Thanks, Alice. So is any other questions on the chat? Has anybody else got a question or some feedback for Alice and Monica?
I think it's great, and I'm really excited. I'll let that person ask a question. I'm just saying I'm dead excited.
Yeah, I'd echo that. No question, but yeah, really impressive stuff, Alice.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, have you looked down the route of doing a sort of a percentage of money going back to the person that is in the future as a value? You know, you sell it, they get a percentage, so they have a equity interest.
Yeah, we haven't looked into that. I think we have looked into telling customers how much money that their products have made, although it adds lots of time and effort for volunteers, because then we have to track exactly who sends the bag and what the value of that bag is. So it's a lot of work and a lot of effort for what we assume at the moment is kind of not enough gain, but it's something definitely that we could test over the next 3 months if there does seem to be any interesting.
You might get better quality items, mightn't you, as well? I suppose if there's an incentive for cash back at some point. But it's brilliant work, I think.
Sorry, can I jump in there? Because I work for retail. I'm the regional manager for Wales. The only problem is with offering cash incentives. If we get that customer to sign up to Gift Aid, we can't use a cash incentive. Gift Aid and cash incentives don't go hand in hand. So there would be a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I think there's so many different exciting avenues to explore. I think the main thing I take away from that, Alice, is that we've learned a lot of stuff, got something out there, and it's a new platform to be tweaking, whether it's the way we advertise, how we reach new markets, how we incentivize people to give different stock. And I think the bit that I'd be really excited for us to test next time is if we're going into new markets of people who might not take the stuff to the store, but might be more online by default, then we could potentially be also using different markets to sell that stuff, you know, whether it's your Depop or your Vinted or stuff like that. So I think there's so many directions this could go that it's just really exciting to have the space to do it.
Cool. All right, thanks so much, Alice. That was super interesting. I'd love to ask some questions as well, but we're going to keep to time. Cool. So finally, we've got Agnes and Ollie who are going to talk about the work on replatforming the main Red Cross website.
Cool. Yes, actually, it's a bit broader than that, Harry. We're talking across the whole estate, but I'll run through that. So hello, everyone. I'm Ollie from the digital team, and Agnes is, where are you, Agnes? Yes, I can see you.
Oh, I'm here.
Cool. And we're
yes,
going to...
You go ahead, because
I was going to say,
I'm in office, but we agreed that you would give the presentation and I'll just mute myself.
Cool. Yes, so going to talk about let me share my screen, the discovery phase of the digital estate replatforming project. So what I will say is we're in like the pretty early stages. We're sort of midway through some research, and we haven't actually really got anything sort of tangible to show this week. So I'm going to just run you through an overview document. I'll try and do it quite quickly, and then we should have some insights that we can actually start to show via a show and tell next week. But I really wanted to just use this opportunity just to kind of, I guess, raise awareness of that this piece of work is happening, and just see if there are any kind of questions around it. So can everyone see the screen with the, I can no longer see what's being seen. Cool. So I'll try and run through this quite quickly, and yeah, then we can just take any questions. So for clarity, or I guess background, so this is a piece of work that is fundamentally looking at the sort of the technical architecture of what we call the digital estate. And just to kind of demystify that term a little bit, we're talking about the majority of the Red Cross's public-facing websites and mobile apps. And the situation right now, and I guess like the ultimate problem we're trying to solve, is that that sort of architecture has grown up sort of pretty organically, has grown pretty organically over many years. And yeah, sort of decisions have been made based on the needs of a specific project or a specific team at that time, which weren't necessarily bad decisions independently, but holistically, they just added up to what is now a very complex and fragmented picture, which basically means it's, in short, it's a mess, and it's a bit of a nightmare to manage, but more importantly, it's a bit of a nightmare to improve. And so the team that is sort of faced with managing it is we're sort of overwhelmed with a lot of technical debt, operational and financial inefficiency. And I guess that the key point is that right now the situation is that technology and the digital estate as a result is more of a constraint than it is an enabler, which is never a situation you want to find yourself in, but particularly given the sort of the ambition that we are aware the organisation has, based on the new 10-year strategy and sort of the Fit for the Future work. So basically, we need to get on the front foot and solve this problem and set ourselves up for the challenges ahead. So what we're looking at through this discovery is to carry out an assessment of actually what the organisation needs from the sort of the technology behind its digital estate, because that's never something that's happened before, or certainly never something that's happened and then been put into practice. So there's two parts: is actually looking at what that strategic architecture needs to be based on a number of inputs, and then to begin looking at what a migration from where we are now to that new architecture would take. So at the moment, we're very much in the kind of discovery, understanding what needs are, and then following that, there'll be we'd expect there'd be a sort of a phased shift from the as is to the to be. And basically, there are three main deliverables that we're looking to come out of this discovery piece with. One of them is that kind of that North Star, that vision for actually what are the principles that and what are the success metrics that we really need to be building towards, and then using that to inform an assessment and a definition of actually what the architecture and stack, the sort of next level down the architecture and stack needs to be. And then, as I said, starting to look at what it would take to get from where we are now to where we need to be. As ever, it's not solely a technical question. We can't just be switching out existing technology with new technology. We need to look at the sort of internal capabilities and skills that would be needed as well. What kind of third-party support would be needed, and then what kind of processes are around it as well. So we are looking at those and are looking to answer some questions around those through this discovery as well. And I think an important part that I just want to call out is that this piece is about, I guess, the sort of the underlying tools in the toolbox rather than the end experience for users. So right now, we know from experience that actually delivering enhancements and improving experiences for end users through, say, the main website is more onerous, more expensive, and takes longer than it should do in the year 2020, 2021. So we really need to address that at source. Otherwise, the sort of the ambition, as we seek to make more changes, and it's only going to be harder, more expensive, and more frustrating, and we're not going to move as quickly as we need to. There's some other bits in this document which I will share. So just a quick note that we will be setting up, and maybe we can come and visit this show and tell as well, but there will be some more show and tells around this project, so there will be plenty more opportunity to find out more. Particularly, I'm sure it'd be more interesting once we've actually got stuff to show. Quick note on the team. So there's myself, Agnes, and then Jed, Kieran, and Julio from the digital team as well. Some of them are on the call, could probably wave. And then I've got some more details about how we're doing for time, Harry. I haven't really been tracking.
You've got another 4 minutes.
4 minutes until cut off for questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, and then so I guess just to sort of so I appreciate everything I've said so far has been quite sort of high level. Just to put it into some kind of context, sort of the scale of the problem. This is, we've just sort of pulled out a few of the sort of the numbers that we have within the estate currently. So there's, we currently have, there's 10 different ways, different actual platforms to manage, which each come with their own, there's their own overheads. There's actually the 6 different ways of managing content within that. And when I say that, I mean, we've got various different content management systems and versions of those content management systems. So it all becomes sort of very complex and different ways of basically doing the same thing. There's a number of different sort of hosting providers and subscriptions, which all basically, there's a lot of duplication. There's a lot of things that sort of meet the same sort of need, provide the same sort of capability, but we've just got them in multiple places, which I guess I don't really need to explain as to the sort of the problems that causes. And then just there's 25 different websites and subdomains in the estate, and I guess the number in and of itself is not a problem, but when you kind of spread that across the various different systems, it all becomes basically, as I said in the initial slide, sort of less than the sum of its parts. And I've got a very text-heavy slide here, which I won't run through now, but again, it just gives you that kind of, I guess, next level down of actually like the sort of problems that the organization faces because of this situation. I think I will, actually, no, there's one more thing I wanted to show, which is a blank screen, that's the one. So as part of this, the phase that we're in at the moment is very much around sort of stakeholder engagement and trying to understand the needs for the, as you can see, like when we're talking about the digital estate, we're ultimately talking about all of the sort of websites and apps, or the vast majority of them at least, that the entire organization kind of uses. So it's a broad range of sort of stakeholders who have a vested interest in this. So we're out and speaking to them through interviews and workshops and surveys at the moment, just to try and understand specific sort of needs and pain points and ambitions that will help feed into this at the moment. So it's a big old list of people. And I will pause there, and Yes and I are happy to sort of take any questions.
How are you engaging the people that actually use our websites?
So I guess that goes back to that slide I had around, I'm not showing a screen anymore, but so this is not about specifically improving the experience of users, the end user, this piece of work. This is specifically about putting ourselves in a better position so that we can more quickly and easily improve the end user experience. So in this case, the users that we're talking to are more internal users. It is a more internal audience. So it's your developers, platform managers, designers, content designers, etc., who need to use the technology in order to improve user experience. Any other questions?
What's going to be the hardest bit?
What is going to be the hardest bit? I think the discovery, the phase that we're in now, I'm hoping will be relatively straightforward. We're going to get some great inputs from a broad range of people. Once we've got those inputs, we'll use that to hopefully sort of create that vision of this is where we think we need to be, what we need to enable, and we'll look at the market and define what we think will best meet that. It's then how we start to put that into practice. So how can we quickly actually test that is the right approach, bearing in mind some of the other things. So I guess it's actually the implementation and the migration, and in what order do we start to look at moving some of the things that we have now over onto where we think we need to be onto the new platform.
And I think the hardest part is going to find that solution that's going to make everyone's life better. Like when you are one of those people that we are interviewing, some of them say, no, it's working fine for me. Some others say, no, it's really not working for me. How are we going to find a solution? Maybe it's not a solution, so we don't really know that, but it's going to be to find the middle ground or the right solution to move forward.
What do you have any sense yet of like what the team should look like for this new estate and this new tech stack?
Not in detail yet, Harry. I guess, we're still very much in. I think we've probably got a pretty decent idea based on experience, but I guess it's all kind of assumptions at this stage. So no, but that is obviously one of the key questions that we need to be answering through that. So something we can hopefully share some info on in the coming weeks. I think actually just to go back to that question about what's the biggest challenge going to be, possibly also managing expectations around what the answer is. So I'm reasonably confident at this stage that what we're not talking about is an all singing, all dancing. This thing can do absolutely everything from the get-go. That would be folly. It's what we need to try and determine is what's the MVP? What are the core capabilities that this platform needs to have from the get-go, and then have a backlog and a roadmap of what needs to be explored and introduced at a later stage. But we can't be trying to build something that does everything from the start. But I'm not sure necessarily that will be, given the sort of the vested interest from lots of people use and potentially will use this new thing. So hopefully managing expectations there.
Cool. So unless there isn't any more questions, I guess that's kind of the. Oh no, there's something on there. Oh no, that's a private message. So yeah.
Harry, I did just see, sorry to cut you off, I did just see there was a question in the chat from Tanya around getting input from more than just heads. So yes, absolutely. So we've got that list is not comprehensive as it sort of noted on the slide. So there's more operational staff who we're getting insight from as well.
Yes, they're the ones that will use it.
Exactly. So yeah.
I don't imagine a head of department or a director is ever going to use it. So actually, their insights and opinion is probably less valid than the one that
it has a different kind of value, Jess. Different kind of value.
So you did there, Ollie.
Yeah.
Actually, I may have got a question. What would you say is like the one or two riskiest assumptions that we have about how we should approach replatforming?
What are the riskiest assumptions about how we approach it?
Just what are our riskiest assumptions? Like if our assumptions about how to do it are wrong, then that will unravel a lot of stuff.
Potentially a risky assumption would be that we'll choose the right thing from the get-go. I guess we need to test. We need to come out of this discovery with the right hypotheses that we can then start to test. Like, as I said, like we're not going to solve everything in one go.
Just a quick question, Ollie. My name is Olu. I just wanted to ask around, I know you talked a little bit about the hosted services and subscriptions across the different systems. Are there any license implications that need to be factored in or at this stage?
So there are license implications from a couple of different areas that need to be factored in, and that's the sort of thing that will help inform that migration plan. Right. Is in what order do we need to do things? So there's various contracts and licenses with suppliers, with software providers that all need to be factored in. So yes is the short answer.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think that's all we've got left for time. But thank you so much to all of our speakers, Ollie, Agnes, Alice and Aaron. And thank you for everyone who's asked questions, given feedback. It's super useful. So yeah, see you all next week. Thanks.
Cool. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.